B&B spoilers. Carter Walton could be in danger. Carter Walton has a new lady in his life. The bold and the beautiful is moving forward with the Carter and Daphne romance we all seen coming a mile away. Carter doesn't know anything about Daphne Rose's Muriel Hilaire past, and word on the internet is it's coming to town. Is Carter in danger on Bold and Beautiful? Keep reading to find out. Here's what's coming up next on the daytime soap. Spoilers down below. Daphne's dangerous past. Daphne the Nose Rose was brought to Los Angeles by her pal Steffi Forrester, Jacqueline McInnes Wood, earlier this year. Originally, Daphne was supposed to seduce Carter for the company, but she ended up actually falling for him. B&B viewers will recall that Carter sent Daphne packing and got engaged to Hope Logan, Annika Noel. The Bold and the Beautiful spoilers hint sparks will be flying this week between Carter and Daphne. They'll spend a cute Thanksgiving together. But a few months ago, a blind item hinted someone from Daphne Rose's shady past was headed to Los Angeles. What if that storyline is finally coming to fruition and the blast from Daphne's past is a dangerous ex? Carter Walton tends to play it safe with his romances on The Bold and the Beautiful. The big coup at Forrester Creations was the craziest thing the character has done in the past decade. He could be in over his head with Daphne Rose and not even know it. A beautiful and mysterious woman like her probably has been involved with some powerful men over the years. Who is Daphne's family? Other Bold and the Beautiful rumors hint Daphne could have a secret sister or another relative coming to town. Will they have a bone to pick with Carter? The mahogany desk felt cold beneath Carter Walton's fingertips, a stark contrast to the burning anxiety in his stomach. It was past midnight, and the expansive, silent COO office at Forrester Creations, usually a bastion of high-fashion energy, felt oppressively heavy. He was back in the seat, granted a grudging reprieve by Eric, but the welcome had been thin, woven with suspicion, particularly from Ridge. Carter reached into his inner suit pocket, pulling out a slim, innocuous silver flash drive. He rotated it slowly between his thumb and forefinger. This little piece of hardware was the real reason he was still sitting here. It contained the meticulously documented truth about the LLC takeover. The meeting logs, the manipulated voting shares, the offshore account that had initially funded the whole chaotic corporate coup. It was proof that while he and Hope had initiated the filing, they were merely pawns. The true puppet master, the one who stood to gain the most from FC's destabilization, remained hidden. He had promised himself he would expose the mastermind tonight. He'd sent an encrypted message to the anonymous contact who had been feeding him breadcrumbs, a contact he now feared was leading him into a trap. Warehouse, Level 3. Midnight. Bring the key. The message was vague, but Carter understood. The key was the flash drive. He looked at his watch. 12:07 a.m. He was running late, and the silence of the building felt like a held breath. He needed to get out of here. He stood, his silk tie catching the faint light of the moon, filtering through the massive, arched window. Just as he reached the door, it flew inward with a violent thud, slamming against the plaster wall. Standing silhouetted in the hallway light was Ridge Forrester. His face was a mask of cold, unyielding fury, the kind of silent rage that was far more terrifying than a shout. Going somewhere, Carter? Ridge's voice was low, cutting through the silence like a razor blade. He didn't wait for an answer, striding into the room and closing the door with deliberate force. Carter slid the drive back into his pocket, his attorney instincts kicking in. Ridge, I was just finishing up a few notes on the Hope for the Future relaunch. We're on a tight deadline. Don't insult me, Ridge scoffed, crossing his arms over his chest. You think I don't know the late-night game, Carter? You've been working overtime, all right. Working to protect yourself, to save your skin after you tried to stab this family in the back. Carter met his gaze, his defense solidifying. I protected Hope. I protected the integrity of a design line that was being wrongfully suppressed. And yes, I made some regrettable decisions, but I'm here now, trying to make things right. Make things right? Ridge laughed, a hollow, brittle sound. You drew up the papers, Carter. You, the loyal COO, the man Eric trusted enough to make his personal attorney. You signed those documents, putting your name on the takeover. You know what that makes you. A serpent in a tailored suit. Ridge walked closer, his designer shoe crunching silently on the carpet. The reason you're still breathing the expensive air in this office is because my father still has a soft spot for the underdog. But that soft spot is wearing thin. You've pushed this family to the brink, Carter. And in this town, when you betray a Forrester, there's always a price to pay. The implied threat hung heavy between them. Ridge wasn't just talking about a pay cut or a demotion. This was Los Angeles, the city of endless drama and dark secrets, where corporate rivalry often spilled into physical danger. I'm done talking about the past, Ridge. I'm moving forward, Carter insisted, trying to sound confident. You should be very careful where you move, Carter, Ridge warned, his eyes narrowed. Because sometimes moving forward takes you straight off a cliff. Good night. Ridge turned, the door closing again, leaving Carter in a silence that was now even more charged with menace. Ridge was a danger, but he was a known variable. The real danger, the reason he was heading to the sub-level warehouse, was the unknown enemy who had put the whole plan in motion. The air in the Forrester Creations basement was thick with the scent of old velvet, canvas dust, and forgotten dreams. Level 3 was the archive, a labyrinth of high-piled boxes containing decades of sketches, fabric swatches, and discontinued fashion lines. It was a perfect place for a private, unauthorized meeting. Carter navigated the tight aisles, his phone's flashlight cutting a weak beam through the gloom. He had traded his suit jacket for a utility vest, a practical choice that he now realized felt more like armor. He stopped by the section marked Quinn at FC, 2017 to 2022, a grim reminder of how many times his life had been tangled up with corporate secrets and forbidden romance. I'm here, he whispered into the empty space. Show yourself. A soft sound, like a loose screw rolling across the concrete floor, echoed from the far end of the aisle. Carter gripped the heavy flashlight like a weapon, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. A figure emerged from the shadows of a towering shelf labeled Marone Family. It wasn't the shadowy, anonymous contact he expected. It wasn't Hope or Daphne. It was Mitch. Mitch was a former security consultant fired 6 months prior by Steffi for questionable oversight, a man known to hold a deep, simmering resentment against the Forrester name. Mitch's eyes were cold, reflecting the phone's light with a terrifying lack of emotion. Mr. Walton, Mitch said, his voice flat. I was wondering if you'd actually show up. Thought Ridge might have snapped and buried you in the rose garden first. You were the contact. Carter lowered the flashlight slightly. You're the one who's been giving me the internal memos? I know the secrets of this building, Carter. I know every wire, every blind spot, every document that goes missing. Mitch took a slow step forward, his hand slipping into his jacket. And I know you have something I need. The key, you called it. Why do you need it? This is about the Forresters, not you, Carter challenged, trying to keep his voice steady. Mitch smiled, but the expression held no warmth. It's always about the money, counselor. The destabilization of FC? That was a delicate operation. You and Hope were just the pretty faces. The ones who drew up the LLC papers weren't the ones cutting the wires. Carter felt a chill run down his spine. Who sent you? The person who needs that drive to disappear. The person who stood to make $100 million when this company went bankrupt and they could swoop in for the assets. The person who pays better than any Forrester, or Logan, for that matter. Before Carter could process the implications that the corporate coup was a deliberate scheme to tank the company, not just a petty power play, Mitch moved. He lunged forward, not with a punch, but with a trained, calculated strike aimed at the pocket where Carter kept the flash drive. Carter dodged, managing to land a blow with his elbow that staggered Mitch momentarily. The two men wrestled between the narrow aisles. Boxes of irreplaceable sketches tumbled, scattering decades of fashion history onto the dusty floor. Carter, a lawyer and COO, was no match for a trained security operative, but adrenaline gave him strength. He fought dirty, knowing his life, and potentially the future of Forrester Creations, depended on protecting the data. Mitch slammed Carter hard against a metal rack. The impact knocked the wind out of him, and the slim silver drive flew from his pocket, skidding several feet across the concrete floor and coming to rest near a pile of old Brooks Bridal samples. "It's mine!" Mitch snarled, scrambling away from Carter and diving for the drive. Carter launched himself after him, but he was too late. Mitch snatched the drive and quickly pocketed it, then spun back around, pulling out a small, metallic object, a stun gun. Carter froze. "You won't get away with this. Ridge knows I'm here. He'll call security." Mitch laughed, a low, guttural sound. "Ridge is probably already counting you out. And the only thing security will find is a man who suffered an unfortunate accident trying to secure some forgotten corporate documents." Mitch aimed the stun gun. "Now, thank you for your service, Mr. Walton. Tell Bill Spencer I said hello when you wake up." The name hit Carter harder than the earlier blow to the ribs. Bill Spencer. Of course. Dollar Bill, the corporate shark, always lurking, waiting for a chance to devour a competitor. The entire takeover, the push for the LLC, the manufacture drama. It was all a calculated play by Spencer Publications to drive Forrester Creations into the ground and buy it for pennies. Carter and Hope were just the unwitting catalysts. The realization brought a fresh surge of desperation. He had to stop Mitch. He had to get the drive back. "You work for Bill." Carter roared, diving sideways just as Mitch fired the stun gun. The electrical snap filled the air, the charge harmlessly striking a box of silk scarves instead of Carter's chest. But Mitch was quick. He had the high ground, standing over Carter, who was momentarily stunned on the floor. Mitch raised his foot, ready to deliver a disabling kick. A sudden, sharp cry echoed from the main level above. "Carter? Is someone down there?" The voice was unmistakably Daphne Rose. Mitch hesitated, his foot hovering. He hadn't expected anyone else to be in the building. Carter took advantage of the distraction, rolling quickly and sweeping Mitch's supporting leg out from under him. Mitch crashed to the floor, the stun gun flying out of his hand and clattering into the darkness. "Stay back, Daphne!" Carter yelled, scrambling to his feet, trying to buy time. Mitch recovered instantly. He was focused only on escape now. He gave a final, furious glance at Carter, a look promising retribution, and sprinted down the narrow aisle, disappearing into the deepest recesses of the archive, heading for a rarely used emergency exit. Daphne appeared moments later, breathless and wide-eyed, having followed the sound of the commotion down the service stairs. She wore a stunning black cocktail dress and heels, her evening having clearly been interrupted. "Carter, what happened? I saw your car and thought. I heard shouting." She rushed over, helping him stand. He was bruised, his expensive shirt torn, and his head was spinning. "Bill Spencer!" Carter gasped, leaning heavily on a stack of boxes. It was Bill. He orchestrated the whole takeover. The LLC was all his doing. The man who attacked me, he took the key. "Bill? But why would he use you?" Daphne whispered, aghast. Carter shook his head, looking around the wreckage of the archive, which now looked like a crime scene. "He didn't use us. He used the situation. He was planning to bankrupt FC from the inside. We were just the convenient scapegoats the drama Ridge could focus on while the real damage was being done." He pointed to the empty floor space where the drive had been. The flash drive contained the full ledger. The truth. He has it now. He's going to use it to wipe out all evidence of his involvement, leaving Hope and me holding the corporate disaster. The revelation hung between them, a terrifying truth that transcended fashion and romance. They weren't just fighting for their jobs or their relationships anymore. They were fighting one of the most powerful, ruthless men in Los Angeles, and he had just successfully stolen the only piece of physical evidence that could expose him. Daphne's initial panic morphed into steely resolve. We have to call someone. The police, Eric, someone. No, Carter said, rubbing his aching temple. Not the police. Not yet. This is Bill Spencer. He'll bury any evidence. Destroy that drive before the sun comes up. And if the Forresters hear Bill's name, it will only cause panic and chaos. He grabbed Daphne's hand, pulling her toward the stairs. We need to move fast. He might have been working alone tonight, but Bill doesn't play solitaire. He has people everywhere. This is the truth, Daphne, the shocking truth the press is going to run wild with if we can prove it. Carter looked at the discarded stun gun Mitch had dropped, a stark symbol of how close he'd come to not surviving the night. The danger wasn't over. It had just taken on the terrifying, powerful shape of the Spencer dynasty. He was officially in too deep. The loyal corporate attorney was now a corporate target, hunted by a mogul who played with companies and lives as if they were chess pieces. Come on, Carter urged, pulling Daphne up the stairs. We're going to find Hope and Ridge. We have to tell them. The Forrester family is about to lose everything, and the only person who can stop it is the man who just threatened to throw me off a cliff. The true game, the fight for Forrester Creations, was only just beginning, and Carter Walton was standing directly in the crosshairs. He just prayed they could outrun Bill Spencer's long gardenias and polished cherry wood was the signature of the Atherton residence. It was a scent that spoke of stability, old money, and impeccable taste. It was, in short, the scent of Daphne Atherton. For 20 years, Daphne had been the matriarch of this perfect world, a tireless philanthropist, a celebrated amateur historian, and the seemingly unflappable wife of Senator Julian Atherton. Her life was a perfectly curated, publicly visible masterpiece of suburban virtue. This masterpiece began to shatter at 7:03 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. Julian was in the library, a room of comforting silence and leather-bound books. He was winding down, reviewing the next day's schedule on his tablet, while Daphne was out hosting the annual Friends of the Arboretum Gala. It was during a lull in the political chatter that an alert flashed across his screen. A breaking story notification from the Global Sentinel, a serious publication he trusted. The headline, stark white against a crimson background, hit him with the force of a physical blow. Exclusive. Daphne Atherton, wife of Senator, identified as Alara Vex, the infamous ghost of Geneva. Julian felt a cold dread crawl up his spine, freezing the blood in his veins. Alara Vex. The name was a phantom of the late 90s, a figure of near-mythic status in the international underworld. She wasn't just a thief. She was an architect of chaos, a ghost who orchestrated impossible heists and left political and corporate rivals in ruins, vanishing before the first alarm bell sounded. The press had called her the Ghost of Geneva because she had orchestrated the disappearance of the priceless chalice of St. Michael from a vault beneath the Swiss city, an act that had embarrassed 3 national security agencies. She had been presumed dead in a yacht explosion off the coast of Morocco in 2002. Julian scoffed, a dry, rasping sound. It was clearly a cheap, sensationalist attack aimed at him, a smear campaign. Daphne? His Daphne, who meticulously organized canned food drives and knew the names of every child in their block. The idea was ludicrous. Yet, as he clicked the link, the polished veneer of his certainty began to crack. The article, which spanned over 8,000 words, was relentless, meticulously footnoted, and terrifyingly detailed. It didn't just claim Daphne was Alara Vex. It provided irrefutable proof, cross-referencing biometric data and timelines that spanned 2 continents. The text was accompanied by a grainy, high-resolution image, an old passport photo, circa 1999. In it, the woman's eyes were the same striking sapphire blue as Daphne's, but everything else was different. The smile was gone, replaced by a challenge. The hair was cropped, almost military short. The jawline was harder, thinner. It was Daphne, yes, but a version of her Julian had never known. A creature built for survival, not charity luncheons. The story laid out Daphne's life, or rather Alara's. She hadn't been born Daphne Atherton. Her birth name was something obscure and Eastern European, changed through a series of forged identities to Alara Vex. Her training began in the shadows of the Cold War aftermath, in a network of former intelligence operatives who specialized in asset retrieval, a polite term for high-stakes, violent larceny. The Chalice of St. Michael was only the beginning. The article listed a dozen other operations: the sabotage of a major defense contractor's IPO, the theft of sensitive data from a South American dictator's private server, a period where she ran a sophisticated operation smuggling historically significant artifacts out of conflict zones, all while dodging the most powerful security forces in the world. Julian read the words ruthless efficiency, cold detachment, and lethal capability. He read about a shootout in a Parisian warehouse where 3 men, confirmed associates of a Russian oligarch, were found dead, and Alara Vex had vanished without a trace, leaving a single, distinctive calling card, an origami swan made from high-denomination currency. Daphne's life, his life, their 20 years together. It all felt like a magnificent, elaborate lie, a brilliantly acted play designed for an audience of one. The weight of the betrayal was suffocating. He thought of her quiet, almost unnerving competence, the way she could size up a room instantly, the fact that she spoke 6 languages flawlessly, a trait she had always dismissed as a passion for travel. He remembered the tiny, almost invisible scar near her left wrist, which she claimed was from a childhood fall, but which the article identified as a bullet graze from the Paris incident. Julian slammed the tablet onto the mahogany desk. The sound echoed in the quiet library, a final, violent punctuation mark on his shattered reality. He picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over Daphne's contact, then pulled back. He needed to hear her voice, but he knew the moment he did, the game would be over. He needed to process the monstrous deceit first. Upstairs, in the master bedroom, the actual Alara Vex, the woman Julian knew as Daphne, was changing out of her gala gown. She was calm, methodical. The gala had been a success. The pledges were up 15%. She had planned to celebrate with a glass of Bordeaux and a quiet hour of reading. Then her own discreet alert system, a small, encrypted feed she maintained in the event the past ever decided to claim her, had pinged. The headline was identical. Daphne paused, the zipper of her dress halfway down her back. She didn't gasp. She didn't panic. She simply closed her eyes and inhaled the scent of gardenias, letting the perfect stillness of the moment settle over her. 20 years, she murmured to herself, her voice low and even. That was a good run. She walked to the large, mirrored dressing table where most people kept perfumes and makeup. Daphne kept something else. She pressed a sequence of keys on the lip of the drawer, and it clicked open, revealing a velvet-lined compartment. Inside was a single, sleek, matte black satellite phone and a small, worn leather-bound journal. As she looked at her reflection, the soft lines around her eyes, the elegant hairstyle, the tasteful pearl earrings, she saw the 2 women struggling for dominance. Daphne was comfort, safety, and love. Alara was the storm that a brief, sharp memory flashed behind her eyes. The chill of the Atlantic air, the smell of diesel and salt, the sound of machine gun fire echoing across the waves. The Moroccan coast, 2002. Alara, then 28, was standing on the deck of a yacht she had just rigged to explode. She wasn't running from the authorities. She was running from them, the organization she had served and subsequently betrayed. They were faster, colder, and more relentless than any government agency. She had taken their money, yes, but she had also taken their blueprints, their contacts, and their entire network hierarchy, effectively dismantling them from the inside. They wanted her dead for the betrayal, not the theft. She had kissed the salt air, dropped her communication equipment into the sea, and plunged into the cold, deep water moments before the yacht was engulfed in a spectacular orange fireball. The world had seen Ilara Vex burn. She spent the next year building Daphne, layer by excruciating layer, a fabricated birth certificate, a college degree purchased on the black market, a convincing employment history, and a carefully constructed, bland personality, her fingers tracing a name written in elegant, almost forgotten calligraphy. Yuri. He was the analyst who had tracked her, the only one who had ever come close. He must have sold the story, or perhaps released it upon his own death, a final, victorious move in a game she thought she had won. She slipped the satellite phone and journal into a small, inconspicuous clutch bag. She knew Julian was coming. She needed to tell him the truth, but not the truth the article presented. She needed him to understand the why. The library door burst open, and Julian stood there, backlit by the overhead chandelier, his face a mask of shock and wounded fury. He held the tablet in a trembling hand, the crimson headline staring out like a bloody wound. "Ilara Vex," he spat, the name tasting foreign and poisonous on his tongue. "The ghost of Geneva. Say it. Tell me that is a lie." Daphne turned, her expression calm, but her sapphire eyes held a 20-year-old terror. She wasn't wearing the pearls anymore. She was just a woman, caught in the headlights of her past. "Julian," she began, her voice steady. "That woman, she died in 2002. "Don't you dare," he roared, taking a step toward her. "Don't you dare try to gaslight me. The article has DNA matches, Julian. It has the scar. The scar, Daphne. From Paris. What was I, a mark? A target for your retirement plan? Was I just your last, greatest, safest lie?" Daphne's calm facade finally cracked, but not with fear, with sorrow. "No, Julian. Never. That life, it was a cage. I was a tool, a brilliant tool, but still a tool. I didn't steal for greed. I stole my freedom. I destroyed that organization because they were coming for everyone I had ever cared about, everyone they thought I might use as leverage. When I met you, I was looking for a way to finally be safe, to be normal. I fell in love with you because you were the most honest thing I had ever touched." She took a slow, deliberate step toward him. "I was Ilara Vex. I am not her now. She committed atrocities, Julian, yes. But Daphne Atherton has only ever loved you and done good in this community. And I faked my death because the only way to be free was to truly, completely cease to exist in that world." Julian stared at her, the tablet slipping from his grasp, crashing onto the carpet with a dull thud. His entire existence hung in the balance, his political career, his reputation, his heart. He saw the genuine, raw love in her eyes, but it was overshadowed by the terrifying knowledge of the monster she had been capable of becoming. "You have blood on your hands, Daphne," he whispered, the fury draining away, leaving only devastation. "And you brought that blood into my home, into my life, and onto my name." Daphne looked down at her hands, still smooth and unmarked by the past. "I know, but they will not stop now, Julian. The news is out. They know Ilara Vex is alive. They will be coming." She didn't need to say who they were. Julian understood. The organization. The remnants of her past. He wasn't just married to a woman who committed fraud. He was married to a war that was about to find its way onto his front lawn. "So what now, Daphne?" Julian asked, his voice hollow. "Do we call the authorities? Do we run?" Daphne picked up the small clutch bag, the one containing the satellite phone and the journal. The elegant Daphne was gone. Ilara Vex had emerged from the ashes of her old life. "The authorities can't protect us, Julian. They never could. And we don't run anymore. We fight." She looked at her husband, the distinguished senator, and gave him the old, challenging look from the passport photo, a look of pure, dangerous intent. "You have an hour to decide if you are Julian Atherton, Senator, or if you are the husband of Ilara Vex. But you cannot be both." The gardenia scent of stability and safety was finally gone, replaced by the faint, metallic tang of fear, and perhaps the thrilling, desperate scent of a war about to begin.